Hey guys, the Explorer of Horror here. Welcome back to some more videos. And of course, as you guys know, there is a new Exorcist film coming out here soon. And while I'm not too excited for it, it did remind me of just thinking about the series, the franchise as a whole, and I wanted to get on here and do a franchise discussion on this series. I don't think I've done one before. Maybe I have in the past, and I just can't remember. But I wanted to get on here and discuss the franchise, I guess, in a way of celebrating the new movie, even though I'm not, because I don't want there to be a new movie. I don't really care there's a new movie. But there is a new one, it's the hype right now, and I want to go back and talk about the franchise, because this is a franchise that's surprising to be a franchise. It should have never been a franchise, honestly. There is some good movies in here, and maybe they could have been their own thing, but as a franchise, I think it's always struggled to be a series. And from the first sequel, Exorcist 2, on, it's just struggled to be a franchise. And there's one sequel that I think is one of the best sequels of all time, but we'll get to that and discuss that in more in depth, because I even have some points with that film where I'm like, did it even need to be an Exorcist film? It's debatable, but we'll get to that here in a second. But yeah, I wanted to go through the franchise, discuss each film individually, my thoughts on the franchise, and I guess at the end of it, just talk about if I'm going to go see the new Exorcist film, Exorcist Believer, and what I think about it, which we'll get to it. But yeah, let's get started. We are, of course, to be starting out with the first film in the series, the one that started it all, The Exorcist. And this is kind of a swan song video for this DVD. I've had this DVD for many, many, many years, and I'm finally going to be getting a 4K. There's like 5 options I have for 4K right now as far as releases go, but I'm glad, because I've had this freaking cardboard DVD forever. And I'm so glad I'm going to finally get a 4K of this movie, because it deserves it. And the fact that it took this one for it to get a 4K is ridiculous. But maybe there were some basic ones before. I don't know. I don't really know. But this movie should have been one of the first horror films to get a 4K. And The Exorcist. This is a film that I did grow up with. I remember, obviously, the infamousy of the film, and just the impact it had in the genre, the impact it had in the world, the culture at the time. And it was such a big deal when it came out that even when I was growing up, everybody was talking about The Exorcist and Jaws and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw. These movies had reputation to them. And The Exorcist, I do remember seeing, not a too young age, but a pretty young age. I might have been around 10 or 11 when I first seen The Exorcist. And it did scare me a lot as a kid. And it's a film that I think is still creepy and scary to this day. There's a certain style to it that William Friedkin did with the camera, the lighting, the direction, making it seem very real. And I think for it to achieve that goal is a big milestone, is a big achievement, because every character feels realistic. Nothing feels too Hollywood about it. And a lot of exorcism films after this would struggle with that, where, even though I like The Last Exorcism, I enjoy that movie, it feels Hollywood. Just by looking at it, it's Hollywood. Here, it's a very nice looking movie. It's very, very well shot. It's very, very well filmed. The cinematography is amazing. The direction by William Friedkin, whether you agree with his methods or not, it's very well done direction. I know he went, some say too far with this film, firing guns off on set just to get people's reactions and treating people like crap sometimes. Apparently, he was a very big ego on set, and he was always, because I think what it is he was obsessed with getting this movie to be as good as it could be. And I feel like him and directors like Tarantino are just so passionate about their vision that they're just willing to just, be jerks sometimes. And depending on the situation, if the actors are giving their all and you're still being a jerk, I think that's still being a jerk. But, It depends on situations and everything. I do know that William Friedkin was being a jerk on set, pretty much, from all the reputation that you hear from his direction. But as the film goes, it's very, very well done. There's certain scenes that just... I love how they don't give you all the answers. There are some scenes that you have to listen to dialogue. That if you don't listen to dialogue in certain scenes, then you'll miss little details. And if you're not looking at the screen at all times, you'll miss things. Whether it's the flashes of the demons' faces in the background, or you're seeing little things here and there, background details. Stuff that I never even realized before when I was watching it, that rewatching it, I notice over and over again. And that to me is so cool, that they put all that detail in the film. And to me, there's just this feeling of darkness to it that I don't think ever came back in the series until part 3. But just the way they do it, to where it's not too over the top, it's not silly, it's not goofy, because I know possession films today are, you know, somewhat goofy, somewhat just played out, and it just becomes not creepy anymore. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with possession films, that there's no new direction for it to go in. It's been done many times. Then there was a film like Talk to Me that came out and did all the right things to me. In my opinion, it did all the right things that it needed to do to be a very different and effective possession film. When a lot of films don't do that, they just go the typical route where it's limbs contorting and head spinning and vomiting, which all came from this movie. Without this movie, you would not have the cliches of today. And I know a lot of people point at the exorcism of Emily Rose as the big possession movie. It's like, well, even that. Like, this came out before that, obviously. And without this movie, there are certain things you wouldn't have. The possession genre that we have today wouldn't exist it wouldn't exist without The Exorcist, rather. And this is a movie that I still love to this day. It's one of my favorite horror films. I'm pretty sure it made it in my top 10 favorite horror films of all time. It's a masterpiece on all levels. The cast is legendary. I think Max von Sydow is a great sort of foe for the demon. And you really don't see a lot of him in the movie. But when he's there, there's a presence there. There's an energy there. And I feel like, you know, Max von Sydow just did an absolutely great job. I don't know. He did an absolutely great job at portraying this character. And I think he did great. But yeah, the rest of the cast, Reagan, Linda Blair, the mother character, Ellen Burstyn, great actors, wonderful performances in this film. You feel really, really bad for this family and what they're going through. And what more can I say about The Exorcist? I mean, it's The Exorcist. It's legendary. It's a masterpiece for a reason. I do have the book right up there. I'm actually looking at it right now. I do have the book. I've never read it, but I do have it, and I do plan on reading it here soon. And I do want to check out the book Legion as well, which is the sequel book, which connects to a film in this franchise. But yeah, The Exorcist, I mean, like I said, really, what more can I say? It's a masterpiece on all levels. It's scary. It's creepy. There are certain scenes that are just, besides the possession scenes, that I find to be just like the beginning of the movie. There is something about the beginning of the movie that takes place in Iran, I think, and it's the desert and the scene of, you know, Max von Sydow staring down the statue and just the way it's all shot. It's very epic, but everything leading up to that, everything that Max von Sydow is seeing around him, just the way that's done, it's just the subtlety factor to it, to where you have the intense scenes, but you also have a subtlety factor to it, which a lot of films today also don't do. It's a slow build, but yet there are scenes that pay off. You could say it's slower build, but you could say it also has a lot of chaotic scenes. Just background scares. I love the music. I love the music in this movie. I think it's a beautiful film. It's equally beautiful and terrifying, which is very, very hard to do. I think that they pulled it off, and I mean, it's just one of the best horror films ever made for a reason. I think it's a masterpiece. There's really not much more I can add. It's extremely well done, and it's easily one of the better horror films I've ever seen. Then, I feel like it was kind of inevitable to get a sequel, and eventually we did. And I wouldn't say it surprised me that... Now, looking at it now, I wouldn't say it surprised me that this film got a sequel. But back when I first found this sequel, it kind of did, because I didn't know they had sequels. So as a kid, and I was younger, I was like, oh, they have sequels? Now I'm like, for as big of a hit as the first movie was, it was inevitable there was going to be a sequel. The only problem was it was a sequel to The Exorcist, and that sequel is Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Yes, I have this movie finally on Blu-ray. And I got the Blu-ray mainly because of curiosity. I found it for cheap, which in the past I didn't. I found it for very, very cheap, and it still has the slipcover. I'm like really shocked I was able to get this with a slipcover. But maybe it wasn't a very good seller. I don't know. And I don't blame people for not buying a lot of them back when this first came out. I think it was like 2016 when this came out, this particular release. Or maybe it was 2017. But there's not really much new features. There's a couple of small interviews with Linda Blair and I think the cinematographer? Or was it the editor? I can't remember. I think it might have been the editor. Was it the editor? But you got 2 interviews. Then you got 2 commentaries. I listened to one of them with director John Borman, and it was one of the worst commentaries I've ever heard. Because it literally is just like, it's dead silence for like 70% of the commentary, and it's him just coming up and saying, oh, this scene, the characters are obviously in danger. They've figured out the connection between their characters, and they're all in danger. I'm like, I know that's what's going on. I don't know. It was a very bad commentary. There was not really much of the features. The interview with Linda Blair was cool, but you figured they would at least do a documentary, at least one documentary. Because this is a film that I think does need a documentary. It needs a documentary with behind-the-scenes footage. We need to know why this happened. And I rewatched it again as I was thinking maybe in high definition it would look better. I think that's the one thing I want to give this movie. I want to give this movie actually 2 things. The look of this movie. I actually do dig the way this movie is shot. The locations they use. It was cool seeing all the different sets they have. Even though, because I like set design, I'm a sucker for it. I do think that some of it looks fake. Like, most of it's supposed to be in the desert, and it looks like it's on a soundstage, literally. So I'm a sucker for it, but at the same time, the quality of it wasn't very high. So it's kind of like one of those things where, do I look at it as a positive or a negative? I love set design, but it looked very, very fake at times, so I don't really know. But I think with Exorcist 2, man, I wanted to rewatch it and see if it improved. And it didn't, man. I mean, it's one of the movies where I can watch it for the visuals. I can watch it maybe for Linda Blair and who else is in this movie? I got the tab. Yeah, right here. Richard Burton, Louise Fletcher, Linda Blair are the 3 leads. And that's a lot of good actors there. I mean, Louise Fletcher won an Oscar before this for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And you got Max von Sydow coming back for the flashbacks. Richard Burton was a very, very respected actor. And so, even in Linda Blair's words, it was meant to be good. And, you know, everything was there. You got John Borman directing. I love Deliverance. So, it's cool having him directing. You've got a lot of money being put into this movie because the first one was a mega hit. So, they were putting a lot of budget into the second film. So, it had the money. Cool. They're wanting to be different. Oh, okay, we're going to go in this and be different. It's going to be a different route. It's not going to be the same thing all over again. The Heretic, why is it called The Heretic? That's never really explained. Or if it is explained, it doesn't make sense. Or it's in care. But it's called The Heretic. All right, cool. Heretic subtitle. All right, cool. You want to take it in a different direction. All right, fine. You're getting back this, Max von Sydow and got the rest of the cast. Fantastic cast. Bringing back Linda Blair for a very different role. Not copying and pasting. Very, very different. So there was really no reason for this movie to be as bad as it is. I think what it came down to, and I was listening to the commentary, and I do think John Boorman didn't like the original Exorcist. I don't think he he didn't outright say he didn't like it, but the way he was kind of talking about it, I got the vibe that he didn't like the original Exorcist, which is number one. I was like, okay, that's noticeable. You're getting a guy who probably, don't quote me, I don't know for sure, but it sounded like he didn't like the original. And that's a big problem, because you're making a sequel to the original. Whether you want to be very, very different, you do got to respect the source material, because that film is very, very important and very, very legendary. And that's the groundwork that you're working from. And so I feel like him not liking the original was a big problem. I feel like maybe some of the chemistry in the cast between Richard Burton and Linda Blair, I don't know if it was really any chemistry there. Richard Burton was completely, by the end of the movie, was out of it. Was just reading cue cards and not caring. And I feel like not caring is also a big thing too. Not caring about the source material, not caring about the story, not caring about making it make sense, not caring about execution of the effects. As I feel like a lot of the effects in this movie look bad, look really dated. Whereas in this movie, the only dated effects I can think of is maybe when the Help Me appears on the stomach of Reagan. When that Help Me appears, the stomach looks a bit fake, like it's makeup or something. I don't know. When the head spins, you can maybe tell it's a dummy. Other than that, nothing else really ages poorly in that film. In this one, it's almost like everything ages poorly. From the shot of the locust flying into the camera with green screen in the background, and the camera flying through the air over Africa and over different, through open fields, and just the background music being a bunch of moaning and yelling and screaming, and that all doesn't age or doesn't work. It's silly. But yeah, the effects of the possessed Reagan coming back, which of course Linda Blair didn't want to put on the makeup again, so they had to get another actress, and you could tell it was very, very obvious. They didn't even try to get someone who looked like her. But even the makeup on Reagan, they don't do it right. It looks wrong. It looks off. How do you mess that up? How do you have these really big, elaborate sets, but they look very, very fake? And I love set design. I do. I love practical sets. Even when they look fake, I love it because it gives a play sort of feel, where it's like almost you're watching a play. I love practical set design. I can't say that enough because I do. I love it. But it looks fake. There are scenes that look very, very fake, that it was on a stage somewhere with some lighting and some fake rocks and some it just looks fake sometimes. Most of the time, I'll be honest. Another thing, it was not scary. This movie is not scary any whatsoever. It's just over the top, silly. I don't know what they were doing with the sequel. And I still didn't find out very much information. I mean, I know Reagan or Linda Blair, my bad. Linda Blair was in the interview saying that the script kept changing. And I feel like that's why do a behind-the-scenes documentary where it's like 3 hours long. Go in depth with the producers and the writers and what happened. Do it. It'll be a big hit if you do that. But Exorcist 2, they're thing, I want to like it. I really do. Looking at it on face value, I want to like this film. Linda Blair comes back. The music by Ennio Morricone, it should have been great. Most time it's not good at all. There is a track though I like from the trailer, which the trailer is one of those trailers that literally the whole movie is in the trailer. If you look at the trailer, don't believe me, look it up. look up the trailer for Exorcist 2. It is literally the whole movie recapped to the whole movie trailer. And that's just crazy to me they did that. But the piece of music they used in the trailer, I think it's called Magic and Ecstasy. Very good track. I like that piece of music. I like Reagan's theme. It's decent. I like the slow version of Magic and Ecstasy, the track from the trailer. They slow it down and give it more of an orchestra feel, and they spread it out the entire film. You got a great cast. It just poorly executed, not enough care, and just not good at all, honestly. It is fun to watch it for the silly effects, the silly scenes, like when you have this character played by it's the Kokomo character, I think, and he's wearing this headdress, this like locust headdress. James Earl Jones is playing Kokomo. And he's wearing this headdress of a locust. And there's a scene where James Earl Jones screams and it turns to a jaguar or something. It's very out there. Very out there, I will say. It's interesting in the way that it's so weird. It's so bizarre. It's so different. And I appreciate that. Again, I want to like this movie. But overall, it's a very, very weak entry. Poor follow-up. And put a major halt on Exorcist becoming a franchise. Many thought that after this movie we wouldn't get another sequel. However, all the way in 1990, 15 years after the original Exorcist, we finally got a follow-up, and that is The Exorcist 3. A.K.A. Legion, A.K.A. Exorcist 3, Legion, A.K.A. Exorcist 1990. There were so many subtitles. Now, this is an older about the same release time as this. So, maybe around 2016. I know they have a 4K out. I know they've released other Blu-rays after this. The picture quality looks fine. Oh, before I continue on Exorcist 3 real quick, I want to comment. The restoration for this movie is very, very poor. It doesn't look much better than the VHS. It still looks blurry and dirty. I don't know what it is. It's a very just blurry looking movie, and it's just, I don't know if it's the way it was shot, but it just doesn't look that good. This looks pretty decent on Blu-ray. I had the regular DVD for a while, which is the same style as the cardboard DVD of the first one. And Exorcist 3 is interesting because you figure after part 2, they would never try another sequel because it was a disaster. I mean, Exorcist 2 made a little bit of money, but it didn't make anywhere near as much money as the first one. Critically, it failed. Fan-wise, it failed. Everyone hated it. And even the people involved hated it. Even the people that wrote the original novel, William Peter Blatty, hated Exorcist 2. Even William Friedkin hated it. So, nobody likes Exorcist 2. So, the fact they would release this movie and call it Exorcist 3 is a bold thing to do. And it honestly ended up being a very, very poor decision by the studio. Now, Exorcist 3, this is a film that is very divisive once again. I know it's honestly kind of one of the more lesser-known sequels out there. It does have a cult following, luckily, over the years. It has gained quite the cult following, almost like Halloween 3. And a lot of people have finally given this film its just desserts. And I'm a huge fan of Exorcist 3. I think Exorcist 3 does everything right that the second one didn't do. It's different enough from the first movie, but it doesn't stray far away from what the first movie was. And in a way, it connects a lot to the first movie's story. Technically, yes, it is a sequel, but it's a spin-off as well. It's its own thing. It's not about the demon 100% in this movie. The Gemini Killer, played by I'm horrible with names today. Brad Dourif. I don't know why I can't remember any names today. Over here struggling. But Brad Dourif does a great job playing the Gemini Killer. A wonderful villain of the movie. Very creepy, eerie, And honestly, the fact that he didn't get awards for this movie is a shame. Maybe he did, and I just don't know. But he should have gotten awards for his performance. So does George C. Scott. Both actors do amazing jobs in this film. And I think that it's the best sequel in the series. I think it's a wonderful follow-up to the first movie. And most times, I put them on the same level. Like, to me, the first and the third one are on the same level. They go great together. You watch the first one, then you go into this one. They go very, very well together. I know a lot of people don't like the theatrical cut, and on this Blu-ray, they actually do have the Legion cut. Shockingly, I don't like the Legion cut. The Legion cut, to me, if that was the final cut, it would have been not a very well done movie, in my opinion. Because, yes, granted, it's not the full Legion cut, because they don't have all the footage, but it was the ending I felt like needed to be something spectacular that's done in this film, where it is an exorcism, the demon comes back, you have this really crazy over-the-top exorcism scene, which I thought was fun. Is it scary? Not really. It's fun, though. It was fun. It was entertaining. But it's a much better finale with the lightning and the ground opening up and the bodies coming up to the ground and the snakes and the fire and all these special effects. George C. Scott delivering a great speech. I believe in you. That whole speech he goes on. I love that. But, yeah, I feel like that works a lot better. Exorcist, the Legion cut of Part 3, very slow, very boring. The performances are very much more, like, calmed down. And so it's a lesser energy of a film. This it's very hyped. You know, you got George C. Scott doing a great job. Very powerful performance. You got Brad Dourif giving it his all. You got some just crazy scenes, out there scenes, a lot of comedy in the movie. So it has a lot of life to it. The Legion cut is very much more serious, just not as many jokes. It's a bit more of a longer cut, I think, and it's just much more slower. And the ending's much more to the point. It literally is just George Scott going up and shooting Brad Dourif's character, and that's it. And so I felt like it was a very disappointing cut because Brad Dourif's performance wasn't as good. The ending wasn't as good. It didn't have any of the demon in this movie. I guess Pazuzu. You didn't have any of the demon in the film. You didn't have any scenes with the original actor from the first movie and that you have in the theatrical cut, Jason Miller. He didn't do any scenes in this cut. It was all Brad Dourif, which I think is also a problem. Overall, I think the theatrical cut, the studio made a right call because they knew it needed a punch, it needed an ending, and even if you called it Legion, I felt like the ending made a lot more sense. Even if it was called Legion, not Exorcist 3. Yeah, could they have built the priest up better? I think they could have. Yeah, there's a couple weird edits. There's a couple weird things don't line up very well. The ending is very abrupt. I'll say that. I like the ending, but it's very abrupt. It just kind of happens like that. But I like this idea a lot better, where it's the demon and the killer in one body, teasing the detective of like, hey, we're doing this. You got to figure out how we're doing this. How are we killing people? That's the whole point. And I love the mystery of it. I love the creepy scenes, the randomness of it. I love how William Peter Bligh directs this movie. How every scene kind of starts with different shots of the room they're in. And you see a little bit of it in the first movie, but I like how in this one it's like the motif. It's like a thing that happens in the movie a lot where it's just, you know, it starts out with a shot of a window seal and you're hearing dialogue. And different shots around the room, and then you finally see the actors. I like that technique. It's different. Of course, the acting, the music. The music is a big bump up from Exorcist 2. Very, very big bump up. The music in this movie is very, very creepy. Just dark and sinister sounding. I love the music in this movie. I love the mood of this movie. I think William Peter Blatty only made 2 movies, which is a shame because this is very, very well directed and just very, very well done sequel. It's decently written. I think there's some little things in the script that could be tweaked if I'm being picky, but I won't be because I love this movie. But also a better Blu-ray than the second movie because it has more features and it looks better. But yeah, it's just, I watch it all the time. It's a movie that I can just watch and never get bored of. Never. I can always pop it in. It's a bit shorter than the first movie. I can always watch it. It's the same thing with the first one. The first one, I can watch this one just over and over and over again, never get bored of it. Same thing with part 3. It's a great follow-up. You know, after you watch the first one, you can pop in the third one and just start right from where this one picks up from and just continue the story. It's a unique story. It's not trying to copy the first movie too much. Yeah, it has possession at the end. It has the exorcism. But it's really different. It's a different approach. Even the scare scenes are a bit different. There's one of the greatest jump scares of all time in this movie. I won't spoil it. I want you guys to go see this film if you haven't. And if you have, it's a good movie, right? I don't know. Some people don't like it, though. I know some people think it's slow, boring, you know, kind of eh. But yeah, just everything about it I love. I love this movie to death. Great film. Wonderful follow-up to this first movie. To the second movie, it doesn't really follow at all. Kind of ignores the second movie, probably for good reason. But when Exorcist 3 came out, there was a big deal where it didn't do very well. It didn't necessarily bomb, but it didn't make any money. It cost $26 million, made $39 million. Not a big profit. There's nothing there. It's not a big hit. And I know the marketing hurt the movie a lot because people were expecting another exorcism film. And it wasn't supposed to be an exorcism film, but they wanted to market it as one. So they had to put a lot of stuff in there, which delayed the film, I think. And they had a bunch of production issues with the film. Then when it came out, it didn't really get a lot of marketing, didn't really get pushed that much, and it didn't do very well. And people also still had a bad taste in their mouth from Exorcist 2. And so I think it should have been called Legion. If it was called Legion and you say, well, it's in the Exorcist universe, it would have made more money, it would have been more successful, probably. But Exorcist 3 not making as much money as projected caused the series to go back into the vault, kind of go back into the background. And so it was many, many years later, it was over 10 years later before the next film or films. Because this next entry, or entries, has another interesting production history. So, in 2004, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, a film called Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist, was made. And I do have the beginning cut, Exorcist the Beginning, over there somewhere buried in my DVD shelf. I didn't want to dig it out, but I found Dominion pretty quick. So this film, I believe, was filmed first. It got done. Studio didn't like it. So they said, hey, Rennie Harlan, come in here and make Exorcist the Beginning. Make it popcorn, make it fun, make it more like the first movie. And then, so in 2004, we got Exorcist the Beginning. And then this was delayed to 2005. When in reality, this was made first with a very similar cast. So we'll get to that here in a minute. But technically, Exorcist 4 came out first. Exorcist 4 the Beginning. And 2004 film, this is another film in the series that really a lot of people hate. In my opinion, you didn't need this. You really didn't need this. After part 3, there was no more you needed to do. You didn't need prequels. We didn't need any of that. And go into this movie, Exorcist the Beginning, directed by, like I said, directed by Rennie Harlan. And I think it's an okay movie. I think it's a fun one. It's a decent watch. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites. I don't watch it a whole lot. I think it's got a lot of problems. but it's fun. I think Stellan Skarsgård does a great job. Well, decent job as the lead, Father Merrin. It was interesting at certain points seeing the prequel side of things, like how Father Merrin lost his faith and trying to get it back, and them fighting this church. Mainly what, to me, the best things in this movie is the set pieces, the effects scenes, the craziness, the gore, the chaos scenes, I guess you could say. Because it is very, very slow. It's kind of boring. It's an hour and 54 minutes. It's a bit long. It could have been trimmed down. It didn't need to be 2 hours. It is boring. It's slow. The music sucks. It's got really bad CGI. However, there are some decent scenes. I love the scene of them finding this church underground, buried. And they're like, why would they bury this church? And they go in there, and all of the statues are pointing their spears downward. And there's a cross upside down in this abandoned church. And it's a very cool looking visual. That scene I love. I love the chaos of the movie. You got kids being eaten by hyenas, and babies being born covered in maggots, and armies fighting each other, and blood everywhere. You got the end of the movie, another possession, which in this movie it is very, very silly. It's very cringe. It's not scary. This movie's not scary at all, but it's just the ending is very, very cringe. It looks like it was shot on a green screen. And it's not a very, very good ending. But the opening I thought was cool. I think it's a movie that it's more of cool scenes rather than a cool movie. It's the movie overall I think is okay. It's passable. It's watchable. There's a lot of problems with the pacing. Everybody else in the cast I really didn't care for other than Stellan Skarsgård. It's got some really bad CGI. It's just boring, uninteresting, a bad score. I think Rennie Harlan, he brung the best in this movie. The look of it, the cinematography, the direction, the action scenes, or the chaos scenes. I think it's okay. I don't know if it's a great way to end your series, because it ended up being, at least theatrically, the last exorcism film that we got. Which, see what I did there? Last exorcism film we got? Yeah, I'll stop. But the last Exorcist film we got was Exorcist: The Beginning, and again, I don't think it did very well. I'm not sure if it made a whole lot of money. They never really learned this franchise, did they? Yeah, it looked like it bombed, actually. Cost $80 million, made $78 million, so it bombed. Didn't even make any money. Critically, it's hated. They never learn. They never learned this franchise. And then a year later, which I guess this technically would be the last one we're discussing tonight on this franchise discussion, is Dominion prequel to The Exorcist, which a lot of fans would prefer this over The Beginning. And I found that interesting because here's a movie that was made twice. You have this cut and The Beginning. The Beginning is much more entertainment factor, blood, gore, craziness, possession. This is a way more slowed down, more psychological type of film. Very, very different. It's not even the same demon and everything. It's very, very different. Or if it is the same demon, it looks different. The possession is very, very different in this film. And a lot of fans they prefer this. This is their preferred cut for part 4. And once again, I checked it out and I was like, all right, here we go. People prefer the Legion cut. I didn't like that. They prefer this cut. I didn't like this cut. I'm not a fan of this cut at all. I think it's probably is the most boring Exorcist film out there. And this was directed by Paul Schrader. And this is his version of Exorcist 4. And I guess what it was is they were going to release this, like I said, in 2004. So they figured, they were like, well, the film's already done. So we might as well let you release this movie. We'll let you release it, do your own thing with it, and we'll see if it does well. And I'm not sure how well it did, but it was only direct-to-video. And a lot of people, like I said, are pretty big fans of it. It says here the budget Oh, well, never mind. It's kind of bombed. $30 million on this film, which didn't even get released, and it only made back $200,000. $251,000. So, yeah, it also bombed. Yeah, 2 bombs in a row. Yikes. But yeah, this one, I really don't like this movie. It was very forgettable. I seen it once. Nothing really to note. It's just a much more slower, boring, even more boring version of the film of Part 4. Once again, Stellan Skarsgård is the only person in the cast I cared about. You don't really have the blood and gore. You don't really have any craziness. It's a lot of bad CGI, which is kind of even worse in this film. Which apparently, the reason why it's much worse in this film is because it wasn't done yet. The effects weren't done, and they just kind of rushed it out there. And the effects are terrible. The demon possession scenes are laughable. And it just seemed like this was a movie where nothing happens. And I swear to you, nothing happens. I'm just don't remember anything. The ending possession scene is lame. The ending is horrible. Not a fan of Dominion. I'm not even sure if I'm going to have this DVD around very much longer. I might sell it eventually. Don't watch it. I don't want to watch it again. Yeah, it's shocking, I know. I just thought it was much more boring, much more slow-paced. I prefer my popcorn Exorcist film with blood and guts and over-the-top possession scenes. At least it's not boring. This is very, very, very slow. And this sucks because that's the last one we talk about in this video today. However, I don't want to close it out on a negative note. You know, closing thoughts on Dominion, very, very boring, slow, not scary, bad CGI. Didn't care about the cast, didn't care about the characters, other than Stellan Skarsgård. Once again, the music sucks. I don't even think it looks as good as Part 4 by Rennie Harlan. It's not even shot as well, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, Dominion probably is the worst exorcism film, because at least Exorcist 2, at least I can look at it and be like, okay, the set design, the locations, the cinematography, I can't even do that for Dominion. So, in my opinion, Dominion is the worst one. But, excuse me, see that I'm burping. Me talking about Dominion, I'm now belching. So, yeah, that's a sign to talk less about Dominion. So Dominion sucks, in my opinion. But I love the original film in Part 3 mainly. Those are the 2 ones that I think are very, very well done. And I think it's very important that, well, the first one's very important on the horror genre. I think the third one's important on the horror genre and the psychological thriller genre. They're 2 very, very well done movies. And even though the franchise as a whole is a bit flawed, I do love the first one and the third one quite a bit. So anyways, y'all, this has been a 43-minute discussion on Exorcist, and we've gone pretty in-depth, and I think this is where the journey ends. So anyways, y'all, that's it. First one is a masterpiece. Second one is a mess of a masterpiece. The third one is a great one. I love the third one. It's one of my favorite sequels of all time. Equally as good as the first one, in my opinion. Part 4, the first version is okay. Second version, Dominion, is trash. So, overall, the franchise is very, very messy. It's not one of my favorite franchises out there, but it is a franchise, definitely. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. What are your guys' thoughts on this franchise? I want to hear what you guys think. Do you like certain movies? Do you hate certain movies? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, this has been a long journey. It's a long road. It's hard as hell. But the journey has come to an end. Anyways, y'all, thank you guys so much for watching and hanging in there for this long video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Explorer 4 is out. Peace.